Hello, Astro Darlings, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I am broadcasting or recording this in lovely, rainy Escazú, Costa Rica, where it is Sunday, November 3rd in the year 2024. And daylight savings time has ended in the United States, and I am now 1 hour behind the East Coast and 2 hours ahead of the West Coast, and it's reversed of what it was yesterday, where I was 1 hour ahead of the West Coast and 2 hours behind the East Coast. So, but when I give you the times on these aspects, I give them to you in Eastern time for clarity. So today is a big day for aspects, and I want to talk about where we are right now. So the two that were very important today, one of them is Venus opposite Jupiter, which is lovely and expansive and fun, was happening at 10:25 Eastern time this morning. And I talked about these last week here on the Golden Astrologer Podcast, and Jupiter and Venus are very good together. They are often highly beneficial. They are expansive to us. They open doors, possibilities. These are all good things that we want in our lives. They are the benefics, the lesser benefic and the greater benefic. And they encourage us to open our hearts, open our beings, open our minds. And, Venus is in Sagittarius. That's an open mind. And it's opposite Jupiter, which rules Sagittarius. So this was a buoyant aspect, and it will be with us for a little while, for a couple days. And this is really an optimistic, positive experience. However, I would say it's balancing the other things that are going on, which is one of them is that Mars and Pluto are in opposition. And this is a much heavier aspect than Venus and Jupiter. They're a lot lighter and frolicking. They can cause a bit of overindulgence, though I think with the balance of Mars and Pluto, that's probably not happening so much. But Mars and Pluto are in opposition at 6:37 a.m. Eastern time. So that was, 4 hours before Venus and Jupiter. But Mars and Pluto are both slower. Mars is slower than Venus, and Pluto is slower than Jupiter. And so I remember I was talking about this a week ago on this podcast, they were really in aspect then. So they've been in aspect all week. And both of them are associated with Scorpio because Mars was the ancient ruler of Scorpio. Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. And so they both have a hand in the scorpionic energies of which we are in the season of Scorpio. But we had a new moon in Scorpio the other night, and that meant the sun and the moon were in Scorpio. And it was, actually it was in the morning. It was 8:47 a.m. Friday morning on the 1st. But both of them ruled that, okay? So when you've got a new moon in a sign that two planets rule, or, the two planets have ruled, they are definitely having some domain over that. And when they are talking to one another in a hard aspect, there's going to be some definite intensities, passions, aggravations, feelings, emotions, stuff while that's going on. So, I felt this most heavily on Thursday, which was Halloween. I felt this most heavily on Thursday. I felt, once the moon had entered Scorpio, and that was 1:29 p.m. on Thursday the 31st, and for me that was 11:29 a.m., I definitely started feeling all of this Thursday. And the most intense for me was Thursday, and a bit on Friday, a little bit every day. But the most impact I felt was Thursday when we got the moon in Scorpio and these two planets were in opposition. And I think the heightened emotion of all of this was this new moon. And while Mars and Pluto were exact today, the new moon, it's a lunation. It kind of exacerbates the whole relationship between Mars and Pluto. Now, if this was a new moon in Libra or Sagittarius, it would have been a different matter. We would have been looking at Jupiter. We would have been looking at Venus. We would have been looking at this Jupiter-Venus opposition that happened this morning to be more in line with a new moon in Libra or in Sagittarius. But Scorpio gives us Mars and Pluto, and there were some things that made me sad. There were some things that hurt my feelings, that made me angry, that made me have to step back and clear my intentions and focus on what was in front of me and focus on what was important, as opposed to, wallowing in, which is can be very scorpionic. Wallowing is kind of scorpionic. I think of that as wallowing. Scorpio's fixed, and I'm a fixed sign, so I understand fixed energy, and I understand all the energy, but I feel fixed energy. And so, when fixity does not get past things often, or it's hard to get past things, and Scorpio is not known for their ability to release and let go. That's Sag. Yeah, I'm over it. That's fire. Water, no. Fixed water, no. Definitely no. So it was hard for me to assess what was happening and what I was feeling, and sort of get outside of my feelings and look at what I needed to do to get past everything. But some of it just required my intelligence and emotional intelligence to work through things. That doesn't mean the stories are over. So first of all, Mars and Pluto are a continuing story. They are a continuing saga. They meet up once every 2 years. And as I said, I made a little post today on Instagram if you want to go watch it, the Golden Astrologer on Instagram. And Mars and Pluto, this is like war. This is warrior energy. This is Mars, the warrior, opposite Pluto, coming out from the underworld. This is our deepest, most intense feelings, our fears, our anxieties, our resentments, our angers, transformation, death anxiety, stuff that we don't necessarily want to look at, but have to. And so, but they are really good at resilience and marching forward. And this is the first time they're meeting, and there will be 2 more times. So, and I can't stress this enough, we're looking at months of this story and transformation. Now, Mars is all about stepping forward, being confident, being a warrior, powering through, especially when it's with Pluto. We can power through, but it's an opposition. So things come from outside of us and create some sort of discomfort, complications, havoc, emotions. There's those emotions again. And this is where I always say be careful, because this is a power struggle, so you could get into road rage with someone. You can get into accidents because you're a little erratic, because you're hot under the collar. This is one of those aspects we have to be careful of, because it can really come out if we're not conscious and using the energy wisely to diffuse the power struggles, to work through something deep within ourselves. Then we are going to get entangled and enmeshed, which is a very Scorpio thing and a very watery thing and a very Pluto thing, enmeshed in stuff that, is because of our reactions to things. So if we can step it up and power through something, that's the best way to plan our work through these aspects that we're going to have. This is the first one today, and it's going to hang in the air a little bit. Mars is moving into Leo, so Mars is moving out of Cancer, a sign it doesn't really it's not fond of, it doesn't really find comfortable. And at 11:10 p.m. tonight, Eastern Time, Mars will move into the sign of Leo. And we like it better in Leo. Mars in Leo is really fiery and expressive and dynamic and more useful than in Cancer, where we might get sad and wallow a bit, okay? And this energy is asking us to brighten up a little bit. Now, Mars is not going very far, because if you remember, in a little over a month, Mars is going to retrograde on December 6th, and it's going to retrograde in very early Leo at 6 degrees. So retrograde, that means it appears to be traveling backwards from where we stand on the Earth, and we all know about Mercury retrograde. Well, Mars goes retrograde too. Everybody from Mercury on out goes retrograde, and Mars does this once every 2 years. So Mars is going to do this, and it's going to be particularly potent because Mars is going to oppose Pluto 3 times throughout this process. So we've got number 1 today as they both get ready to leave signs. So Mars is leaving Cancer today, going into Leo. Pluto on November 19th, as I've said ad infinitum, is going into Aquarius. So this is where things get a little complicated, because Mars is going to be in Leo from tonight till next year and not get past 6 degrees of Leo. Every sign is 30 degrees. It's going to go only 6 degrees on December 6th turnaround. And so it leaves Leo to go back into Cancer on January 7th. So really tonight, it's going into Leo. It's going to be in Leo all of November, all of December, and on January 7th, it's going to go back into the sign of Cancer and stay there for a while. And then go direct at the end of February, and then move through the rest of Cancer, and then go into the sign of Leo again, where it will then again oppose Pluto for the 3rd time. Now, the oppositions are today, Sunday the 3rd of November. Then it will be January 3rd for the 2nd opposition. And then the 3rd opposition will be April 26th. So you can see the story we're starting today, or that we've been working through these last few days, this last week, is going to go on until April 26th. However, there's a different dynamic. We're at the end of something, because Mars is at the end of Cancer and Pluto is at the end of Capricorn. And Pluto's not coming back, but Mars is. So there's and you're going to be like, what? Means that they aren't meeting up except in Aquarius and Leo. So Mars is going into Leo tonight. It's going to stay in Leo. It'll oppose Pluto in Leo after it's retrograde, and then it'll oppose Pluto in Leo one more time, April 26th of next year. So we've got so much to be said about this that we are going to be talking about this a whole lot. And this is something really dynamic that we are going to be pulling apart in our own charts. And certainly I'm here to support you. And if this affects you, then, and you feel it, then come talk to me about an astrology session, and we can see where these dynamics are playing out in your astrological chart and what areas of your life they affect. So it's going to be very interesting, because signs have energies. They have different stories attached to them. Cancer is about, security. Capricorn's about security, so they're both in security-oriented signs. Leo and Aquarius are not so much about security. They're about a different dynamic. Right now, we're looking at the end of something that we might have been comfortable with, and then that gave us security, or apparent security. And then when we move into, this Leo-Aquarius dynamic, well, now we're moving into a different situation and paradigm. Aquarius is all about humanitarian efforts and altruism and independence, revolution. It's not something that's cozy and warm so much. Leo's a little cozier because it's a fire sign, but it's this opposition, this dynamic between the heart-centeredness of Leo and the humanitarian efforts of Aquarius. That's where I'd like to go with that energy, okay? This is where we should go with this energy. Ideally, when we get Pluto in Aquarius, I know I've been talking about revolution and the end of Capricorn and whatever, you're finished after 16 years, but let's start talking about the future. Aquarius is a sign of humanity. It is the humanitarian. It is the revolutionary, yes, and sometimes revolution for the sake of or in the name of humanity. And sometimes things have to be, revolutionary in order to move forward. There has to be progress in some way, and sometimes that's the only way to do it. But Pluto, ideally, what we want to see is humanity come back together in a certain way, that. And I do expect a certain amount of revolution during this time, but I'm not going to kid myself. There's dark and light. And my teacher would say to us that revolutions are not started by nice people. And so that is, I would think, true. Of course, you could start a revolution in your own life, but I don't believe that this is going to go without some sort of revolution somewhere, okay? And this might be the flame, Mars might be the flame that gets that moving. However, ideally, like I was saying, and I want to go and put a positive spin on this, because like I said, again, there's dark and light. We want to go in a direction where people are going to be happy in the state of humanity, that humanity kind of comes together, that we start treating each other better, that we start looking at a union rather than division. And however, when Pluto enters a sign, Pluto brings out all the darkness from the underworld. Pluto brings out the darkness, the darker qualities of the sign first, and then once it clears out the basement, it then starts to bring the more positive qualities. And if we're not happy with what we see with Pluto coming out of the basement of Aquarius, then we need to take some action and take some focus and change that in our own world so that we can see that in a greater sense in the greater world. And, I would think the opposite of humanitarian efforts is division. And we certainly see a lot of division right now. People are always going to have opinions. The opinions should not divide us. We agree to disagree. That's all. The opinions are what make us different and interesting, but they also can be very divisive if we don't, watch that. And it's what starts wars, So the Plutonian energy in Aquarius is going to be very, very interesting. We're not there yet. It's November 19th. We've got another few weeks. But I think it's fascinating that Mars, which is the lower octave of Pluto, is really escorting us into this new era, this new paradigm. It's not something where Pluto is just popping into Aquarius and that's it. Mars is showing us how to connect and how to walk forward, because that's what Mars does. It walks forward, it steps forward. And in Leo, Mars is more independent and empowered and fiery and confident than it is in the sign of Cancer. It doesn't like being in Cancer. It's exalted in Capricorn. It works better in fire signs like Sag and Leo, and obviously Aries, its own sign. But there's a component of this that's going to ask us to lead ourselves into this new era. And Mars and Leo can help us do that. We may need to step back into the Cancerian energies for a bit when Mars does that, to understand where the areas that require us to empower ourselves. So it's, Cancer is a much more vulnerable sign than Leo. Cancer is really the nest. It's where we're comfortable. It's where we want to stay cozy, And Leo is warm and sunny, but it is much more empowered than a Mars in Cancer aspect. So we're going to understand our vulnerable areas. We're going to understand where we feel insecure. We're going to understand where we need to own our power and then step forward and do that. In the zodiac, Cancer rules the fourth house. It's the family. The fifth house is children. And that's the Leo house. That's the Leo area of the zodiac. But it's also where we fall in love. So it's where we get outside of the family nest and we start to go out and be independent and start falling in love and start making art and make our own family, have children. And I wouldn't doubt that there are going to be stories about children and in each of our lives because of Mars and Leo. And, they could be very good, but there may be a lot of stories about family and children in these months in each of our lives. Like, what are the children up to? The children are growing up. How do we meet their needs? Those kinds of things. But as I've said before, Pluto goes into Aquarius. We are approaching a new era, a new paradigm. And so Mars is sort of helping us get through this, escorting us into it and showing us where we need to reintegrate some of our empowerment. Like, we're going to get a nice taste of our empowerment when these next couple months with Mars in Leo, but we have to, if we're not ready for it, if we're not ready to be empowered in certain areas, say it's your career, for example, and you want to step forward and you want to be big and bold in your career because you've got Leo there, right? And you got Mars going into Leo. If there are things about it, any place that you're insecure in your career, then you are going to have to like look into the corners and dust them out when Mars goes back into Cancer for that time, from early January through, the April. So there's a few more months of, this is what's in the way. I'm going to clear out my obstacles. I'm going to clear out the things that are in the way from me embracing my power in my career. That's one example. That's what it could look like. Okay, stepping back, understanding, this is where I need to do a little more emotional homework. This is where I need to clear up obstacles. This is where I need to not be afraid and be able to step into my own power. Okay, so things right now are showing us where we can become more authentic ourselves, expressive, and empowered. But it requires probably a little bit of homework for each of us to do that, okay? Maybe you've been wanting it for a really long time, and this is what you're going to experience when Mars and Pluto connect these 3 times. They are transformational, no doubt. If you want to create something brand new in your life, this is the time. This is the time to really work on that. And it's not going to be tomorrow just because they oppose today. This is a process that we want to see happen over these months, and we want to come out of it sparkling next April, right? Which really is an interesting dynamic. This is months and months of this process that we're going to learn about our own vulnerabilities and our own sensitivities and what we really want to achieve going forward with Pluto in Aquarius, right? So, and that's going to be for good. Pluto was going into Aquarius, 20 years of this, okay? That's it. No more changes. In the meantime, Mercury has entered Sagittarius, and it's not its favorite sign because Mercury belongs in Gemini, the opposite sign. So Mercury and Sag could run off at the mouth. Mercury and Sag can be overly enthusiastic about something and not really, not really pay attention to the details. They could just run headlong into something and then realize that it's, not going to work out for them, only too late. Mercury is going to go retrograde in Sagittarius. So Mercury is going to be in Sag for a while. It's going to be there till January. So it entered Sag the other day when we started having this new moon and all this energy. But this is something really interesting because once it goes retrograde, so we've got a Mercury retrograde happening at the end of this month, starting, its usual 3 weeks, but it's going to be retrograde in a sign that it's in its detriment. And so it isn't in the best place. So I would expect each of us to need to pay attention to the details very strongly. Don't run roughshod over the details. Do the best you can to work them out and to work through them so they don't come back and slap you in the face. Okay, so this is a long process of Mercury not going into Capricorn, Mercury staying in Sagittarius, and really not seeing Capricorn until next year. This is all very interesting because what I'm telling you is that when 2025 begins in a couple months, it's not really beginning anew. We're going to be treading over paths that we've been through in 2024. We're not finished, and we're not going to be finished. So this is going to be a very interesting start of the new year. And as I have said before, people get all New Year-ish. Let's set our intentions. Let's call them resolutions. Let's call them intentions. Let's call them whatever. But we're setting them January 1st when we're still dealing with things from this year, things that have just transpired in these last weeks. Okay, so, and that's what's going to happen with Mars and then Mercury and then eventually Venus. And so we're going to be retreading a whole lot. So I really advise you to pay attention to your life right now. And don't think you're going to get way ahead in the next few weeks. It's not going to happen. You've got a few weeks to like make some progress, but we're in a bigger longer process than we believe we are right now. And so, as the weeks unfold, we're going to watch ourselves evolve, develop, go within a bit to connect with what needs to be cleaned up and straightened out and realigned. That's a big one. So I advise you to look deeply at those things, all the things that might not be working out for you right now, or you're trying to push forward on. What doesn't feel like it's ready to pop yet? Sit down with it. Why doesn't it feel like it's ready to pop yet? That's because perhaps the alignment isn't there yet. So for some smooth energy tomorrow, the sun is going to trine Saturn. The sun is in Scorpio, as we know. Trining Saturn in Pisces, very lovely. This is a nice, stable water sign aspect. This is where, we gain some insight and stability to this Scorpio season. And I have to say that, you hear a lot. Okay, so Halloween was the other night, and there is All Saints and the Day of the Dead and Samhain and all the connection with ancestors and the spirit world. Every year I hear people say, the veil is very thin right now. And I really understand that now. I really felt that this year. And I do feel it. Scorpio is a time when we are between the netherworlds. It is death and regeneration. But those who have departed, our loved ones who have departed, and our ancestors and that came before us, that became way before us, this is a time when they're supposed to be speaking, and we're supposed to be listening, and we're listening to our departed loved ones and hearing messages from them. And I feel it. I'm very sensitive, obviously, because it makes me good at what I do, and it makes me be able to help people and tune in to what needs to be said and report back to everyone. But I really feel everything anyway. I feel collective tides. I feel heaviness in the air. There's a lot of heaviness right now with this Pluto shift, and then, of course, things going on in the U.S. And I really feel this connection to the ancestors right now. I really feel that the veil is thin at this time of year. And this is the first time I would have to say I understand it on a very deep level. It is a great time for connecting with your ancestors. It is a great time to connect to your inner guidance. It is a great time to connect to your spirit guides, to those who have left, your departed loved ones. And it is so profound. Scorpio is a profound sign. It's a deep sign. It's an intense sign, but it is a profound time between life and death. It's that veil between life and death. And that in astrology, it's Scorpio, is the 8th house. And that 8th house, everybody's 8th house, whether you've got Scorpio in the 8th house or not, I don't, but the 8th house is about that. And that's what Scorpio is about, that veil between this world and the next. And this time of year, we honor that. We honor the place. Eventually, we're all going to go there. We're going to go into the next world. And we've come from that world, too. So we have to remember that it isn't just about this life and the material world. There's another world after this. And 8th house is, well, if you have no planets in the 8th house, and it's very practical for you because it is other people's money as well, you may not be tapping into that energy on a regular basis. I, of course, am. But I do believe it's important to honor that and acknowledge it at this time of the year. And things die, in the northern hemisphere, the plants and the trees are dying. They're getting ready to sleep, but they're going to regenerate again. And we take our tips from nature. Nature is a very healing place to be. And even with the cycles of the seasons, they help us adjust to the cycles of life. They help us understand and connect to the cycles of life. And we know that there's a new day after the old one dies. So go out and spend some time in nature. This time of year, it's really good to do that. If you live in the southern hemisphere and it's becoming spring, then you are watching the regeneration. That's the other side of Scorpio. Scorpio is about, life and resurrection and death and resurrection. And there's the other side of it. It's when things come back to life again. It's the life after death. One is just as important as the other. So in order to have faith in life and that things are going to come back again, we need to watch those cycles and watch those seasons and watch nature do her thing. Okay? Here, of course, it's rainy season and going to become dry season soon. So again, it's a different cycle. One thing ends and something new begins. And Scorpio tells the story of that, and that nothing lasts forever. And so I think that that's something really great to pay attention to and to connect with the other regions, the other worlds during this time, if you can. And then there's Venus and Neptune next Saturday the 9th. They will be in a square to one another. And Venus and Neptune are lower and higher octaves of each other. And that could be a time of great creativity, even if it's a square. It could be a very lovely emotional time. It could be a little bit of a weepy emotional time. It could be a sensitive time. It's also a time not to overindulge, because Neptune and Jupiter are planets of overindulgence. So right now we've got Venus opposite Jupiter, and then she's going to square Neptune. So there's a feeling of using that, I think, to be creative, to be sensitive, to be empathic, and to not be starry-eyed and delusional about anything, really. You can be optimistic, but I think the greatest use of that energy is empathy. And so we are having some genuine empathic aspects this week, which I think are very good. So this is it for the week ahead. I thank you for listening. Please have a beautiful week. Please honor Mars, Pluto, and connect with this transition, and honor where you want to go, plus where you've been, plus what's been vulnerable, plus what's where you want to go ahead and forge forward. I am available for consultations on astrology, on Reiki, and you can book those at my website, goldenastrologer.com. Just click book online. I am available for expansion mentoring, which goes 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and we do a longer work. We look at everything. I help you with ending old patterns, old beliefs, anything where you want to step forward and empower yourself. This is what we do in expansion mentoring. We get you to that next level, and that's very exciting. So you can join me in that, and that's also, you can contact me about it, deb@debmcbride.com, info@thegoldenastrologer.com, or you can book yourself for 3 months or so on my website, thegoldenastrologer.com. I'm on Instagram, The Golden Astrologer, and I'm on this lovely podcast. And if you are interested in a New Vision mini scan, I suggest you go to the New Vision website, newvisionusa.com, NU Vision, and click on mini scan and read about it. And you can get your top 10 health recommendations from our mini scan for only $35. And I welcome all to do that. So have a beautiful week. Thank you for listening. Gratitude to each and every one of you. And I shall see you on the internet.